Hello everybody, this is another Hot Wheels collector video. Today we are looking at the Mazda RX8, which is actually a brand new casting for 2023. This car features in the Hot Wheels premium mainline set. Now what I mean by premium mainline is, it's essentially just a mainline, so it has a plastic base and plastic wheels. However, it does receive the premium tampo treatment and is actually quite a bit more expensive, at least here in the UK, to buy in shops. This car cost me £3.49 at a local Smyth toy superstore. This car features in Series 3 of the Fast and Furious Premium Mainline set and is car number 3 out of 10 in that set. I will also mention that this car does feature in the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift movie and is actually driven by Neela in that film. It's quite a minor car, it's not a major car in the film, and you probably didn't even know it existed in the movie. I didn't until I did a little bit of research. I know it's in the scene where they do some drifting.
Once I got my license, I practically lived up here.
But yeah, there you go. That's where this car does feature in the Fast and Furious franchise. Anyways, I've already told you where I found this car, so let me give you some facts about the real life thing. So in real life, this car has a 1.3 litre 13B rotary Wankel engine, and this particular RX8, which features in the Fast and Furious movie, has a Veilside D1 GT body kit. This car produces 191 horsepower and 187 pound-feet of torque, converting to about 254 newton meters of torque. This car also has a quarter-mile time in 14.9 seconds at a top speed whilst doing the quarter mile of 103.6 miles per hour, and that converts to about 167 kilometers per hour. This car also has a top speed, in total by the way, the previous top speed I've just taught you about was when it was doing the quarter mile, but the actual top speed of this car, which is electronically limited, is 148 miles per hour, which converts to 238 kilometers per hour. Without that limiter though, or the governor as you would call it, this car is apparently capable of over 170 miles per hour, so it has a lot more performance without that governor. This car is also rear wheel drive as you would expect, and when it was new costed between £21,200 all the way to £25,800 in 2004, depending on what spec and trim you decided to pick. That converts to $25,800 all the way to $31,400. And now, the 2004 RX8 is valued at the low price of $1,500 all the way to $6,100. That converts to £1,233 all the way up to £5,000. The reason why this is so low is because this car is so unreliable in real life. Whilst I do love this car, the engine in this thing is pretty awful. After about 60,000 miles, it's known to blow up, cause many different issues. It's definitely not a reliable car, unfortunately, because the designing of this thing is fantastic in my opinion. I really do love this car, and if it was up to me, I would give this car a 10 out of 10 at the end of this video, but I'm not going to allow that bias of me loving the car and its styling in real life to affect my score. So I will give you a score based on how much value for money you get with this car. But stay tuned till the end of the video to hear about that. Anyways, that is it for the facts about this car. Now let's move on to my showcase of this thing. Alright, so kicking off this showcase then, we'll first of all take a look at the side of this car, and I'll first of all mention the wheel choice on this thing. So this car is rolling on the 10-spoke wheels, which are being painted in chrome. These wheels are pretty accurate to the movie car, because in the movie, the car does actually have 9-spoke wheels, but the Hot Wheels team do not have any 9-spoke wheels for the mainline. So instead they have done 10 spokes, which still do look pretty accurate to the movie car. I'm really impressed with how good they've actually represented the movie car in terms of wheel choice. As for the actual colour of this car then, it's done in a two-tone look. The front of the car is done in this metallic blue colour, it's quite a light blue. And the metal flake on that blue is kind of a yellowy orange colour. And for the rear of the car, it's all painted in this glossy black colour. It almost has a spray paint effect, which I believe is actually created through tampo work. You can see it here. I'll zoom in a little bit in the editing. It's loads of little different dots which do make it look like the car's been spray painted, but I don't think that's what's happened. I think that is just tampo work, because when you feel it, it's kind of got that tampo work feeling. It's kind of a little bit more, I suppose, grippy than paint. Speaking of tampo work on the side of this thing then, I've pretty much already mentioned most of it. The rest of the tampo work is in the form of pinstripes, which have been tampoed in a light blue colour. A very similar light blue to the light blue which we do see on the front of this car. Alright, so that is it for the tamper work on the side of this thing. Now onto the actual metal casting itself. So first of all, I will mention that the door handles do actually feature in the metal casting there. I will also mention that all the windows on this car are actually wound up. And I will also mention that this car does not feature any wing mirrors. I will also mention that there is a fender vent featuring on this car on the front fender. And finally, I will mention that there is this quite crazy looking side skirt which is created through the actual metal which creates the body of the car. It is not created through the black plastic base. Anyways, that is it for the side of this thing. Now let's move on to the front of this car. Alright, so taking a look at the front of this car then, we do have quite a decent amount of detail here, so let's get straight into it. First of all, I will mention that you can see the metal flake in this blue paint a lot better from this angle. As I've already mentioned, it is this yellowy orange metal flake and there's quite a lot of it in the paint. I will also mention that the headlights of this car have been done in a realistic look. Those headlights do include the indicator or turn signal lights which have been tampered in orange. The rest of the headlight has been tampered in a mixture of silver and black. And I will quickly mention that this car does not actually feature the Mazda badge featured in the tamper work, but that's totally okay, as with the Veilside body kit, the car actually gets debadged on the front, as you can see on the card art there. So it is actually accurate, and your car should also not have a Mazda badge. So definitely don't worry about that, it's totally fine and it should be like that. And that is it for the tamper work on the front of this thing. Let's move straight onto the metal casting itself and plastic usage. So first of all, I'll mention that the front splitter of this car is created through the metal body of this car. I'll also mention that there are 3 vents featuring on the front of this thing. First of all, we have the main front grille of this car, which is the larger vent. And then we have 2 smaller vents, one to the left and one to the right of the main grille of this thing. They all are actual holes or shutoffs in the metal casting, and they do lead through to the black base plastic. However, I do have a gripe with them. You'll be able to see that, yes, these vents all do lead through the black plastic. However, that black plastic does not receive any detail in terms of texturing. For some reason, the Hot Wheels design team have just made it flat, but on the real life car, it actually does have kind of a mesh effect. I don't know why they've done this. It just seems like they've overlooked this part of the car, and it kind of does ruin the aesthetic. But yeah, there you go. I just wanted to show you this because it might make or break the deal for some of you guys. It is a big shame in my opinion. Oh, and one final piece of tamper work which I almost forgot to mention is you can see the side marker light is actually tampered on here in this kind of whitish silver look. It's quite a washed out white colour. That's the only way I can really describe it. Great detail there. This amount of detail is something you do expect to see since you are paying a premium though. Anyways, that is it for the front of this thing. Now let's move on to the next side of the car. Alright, so moving on to the next side of this thing then is the exact same as the previous, so I'm not going to bore you with going over everything all over again. You can obviously pause the video here and have a look if you are looking for something specific. The only detail which actually does feature on this side but doesn't feature on the previous is the fuel filler cap is actually on this side and is moulded into the metal casting itself. Anyways, that is it for this side of the car. Now let's move on to the rear of this thing. Alright, and taking a look at the rear of this car then, this is where I think the car shines. The detail here is fantastic, the metal casting is fantastic, and the plastic usage is also great, so let's get straight into it. First of all, I will mention that the rear lights of this car are done in a realistic look. You can see these rear lights do include the indicator lights, reverse lights, as well as the brake lights. You can see the indicator light has been done in orange, the reverse lights on this car have been done in white, and finally we do have the brake lights on this car being done in red. We also do have the Mazda badge being tampered on here in silver. We also do have the Mazda writing also being tampered on here in silver, accurate to the real life car. And finally we do have an RX8 badge once again being tampered on here in silver. Great detailing there. We also do have the returning blue pinstriping to the rear of this car. And that is it for the tamper work. Now onto the actual metal casting. So first of all, you can see this giant spoiler on the car, which actually is pretty accurate to the movie car, even though this spoiler is created through the metal casting and is not a plastic separate piece. Usually the separate plastic piece spoilers are quite a lot more detailed, but for some reason this thing actually looks very good. They've done a great job on that spoiler, very impressed. And you will also notice that the license plate holder of this car is actually featuring in the metal casting. And finally, I'll mention that the diffuser section of this car is all done through the black base plastic. And you'll notice that the dual exit exhausts do actually feature in this black base plastic as well, in the diffuser section of this car. Anyways, that's really it for the rear of this thing. Now let's move on to the top of this car. Alright, so taking a look at the top of this car then, there is quite a decent amount of detail here as well, both in terms of tamper work, but also in terms of the metal casting. So first of all, you can see the gigantic spoiler which features on this car from the top view. Moving on, I will quickly mention that the interior plastic of this car is done in black. I will also mention that that kind of spray paint effect does continue to the top of this thing. I will also mention that unfortunately this car does not feature any windshield wipers. It is a small detail which is missing, however it's a detail nonetheless, and it will affect my score in a negative way at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. Finally, onto the hood of this thing then, we do have some tamper work and some detail in the metal casting. So first of all, we do have that continued pinstriping on this car. However, on the hood of the thing, it's actually done in a different blue, a much darker blue. It's kind of a metallic looking blue. It's the same blue which we actually saw on the Dodge Charger Drift car, which I've previously reviewed, which features in the PKs. Very interesting tamper work there, but it does look fantastic. I hope to see this tamper on more cars in the future. This is the second time I've ever seen this type of tampering. Looks fantastic and looks way better than regular tamper in my opinion. Really unique look. And finally, you can see this rotary shaped triangle featuring the hood. This is accurate to the real life car, and it is a design cue that the real life car does have. Nice to see that the Hot Wheels team have actually represented that in this casting. Anyways, that is it for the top of this thing, and that is also it for my showcase of this thing. So now let's move on to my final thoughts and review on this car. Alright, so now it's time for my final thoughts and review on this car. I really do think the Hot Wheels design team have done a fantastic job on this thing. I actually think it looks better than the movie car. The reason I say that is because this car is just two-tone. It's black and blue, where the movie car has three different tones. So first of all, it has that black, but then that black fades into a dark blue colour, kind of like what you see on the hood of this Hot Wheels model, and then it fades into this light blue colour. I actually prefer it just being the two-tone colour. It does look quite a bit more modern, and I also like kind of the spray paint effect which we do see on this thing. Looks really good. I also do like the body kit featuring on this car. The tamper work is very impressive, particularly the rear of the car. I think the rear of the car looks fantastic. Super well done. However, I've got a few gripes with this thing. I don't like the fact that this car does not have any wing mirrors. That's going to affect my score at the end. I'm not a big fan of the fact that this car does not have any windshield wipers. That is also going to affect my score. And finally, the front vents on this thing don't receive any detail in terms of texture. Whilst the card art and the real life car, even though it has the body kit, has got textured vents, this thing just has flat plastic in those vents, which is a shame because it would have been such an easy detail to add from the Hot Wheels team, but for some reason they were just a bit lazy on that department. I don't know why they've done that because it does ruin the aesthetic a bit from the front. I do think that the rear of this car is perfect, but the front of this thing could have done with a little bit more work and a bit more attention to detail in my opinion. I also do like the wheel choice on this thing. The real life car which features in the movie I believe does have 9-spoke wheels, so these are pretty accurate. Of course, the Hot Wheels team does not have 9-spoke wheels, so they've put the 10-spoke wheels on this thing in chrome instead. That is accurate. The colour of these wheels is accurate to the movie as well. Can't fault that. But this car is really nice. I do like this car in real life. They've done a really good job on it, the Hot Wheels team, but there are quite a few things which I wish were a little bit better. Just a little bit better. And that does lead me on my score out of 10 for this thing. So when I move this car out of 10, it's going to be receiving an 8 out of 10. In my total opinion for this thing, I'd probably give it quite close to a 10 out of 10, just because I love the RX8. But I'm not going to let that bias affect my actual score for the video, because I want to give you a score which is fair and kind of tells you how much value for money you get with this car. And I genuinely do think there are a few details here missing which do ruin the aesthetic of the car quite a decent amount. If those details were perfected and changed in the next release of this car, it would easily get a 10 out of 10. I love the way it looks, but those few details, like I say, I don't know why they couldn't have just added them and made them a bit better. But anyways, that is it for this video. So if you guys did enjoy, make sure to like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Remember, you can also press that notification bell so you do not miss any new uploads. Remember, you can also share this video with any friends, family, or any groups who may be interested. But remember, don't feel pressure to if you don't feel like you have anybody who may be interested. You watching this video all the way to the end means so much to me, and I really do thank you for making it all the way up until this point. But anyways, that is it for this video, so I hope you guys did enjoy, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye everyone.